Okay, so picking up where we left off, let's take a really quick peek at this particular page. It's called multiple paragraph post. So let's see how that would show up if we did a search for it on the website. So if I go over here where it says my favorite places and where it says visit site, if I right click on this and say open a new tab, then I can keep both of these open at once, which is kind of nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a search for the word multiple. Okay, and then what it does is it brings up this archive results page, and it will pull up these shortened things for what it came up with. So we found multiple paragraph post, and we also found multiple paragraph page. And remember, these are just some things from that example content plugin. All right, but notice this is the one that we're currently working on where it says multiple paragraph post. Now if I go back over here and I decide that I want something nice, short and sweet, and I don't want that entire first paragraph showing up, then what I can do is come down to the excerpt, and I'm just going to type, for right now, I'm going to say this is an excerpt. But of course, what you would really want to do is you'd want to write something really meaningful here that really kind of entices the reader to look at this. Okay, and you can even put HTML stuff down here. So you could, for instance, put a strong tag around the word excerpt. So we'll do this, like if we wanted to make it sort of bold and semantically strong. Okay, so we'll do that, and then I'm going to update this, and then once it's updated I can jump back over here and I'm going to go right here where it says multiple, and I'm going to hit enter again to do a new search, and you see what happens is that it pulls up my excerpt now instead, and that can actually be really handy sometimes if you don't want a whole bunch of just the beginning of whatever it is, because maybe the beginning paragraph isn't adequate in, pulling up the information. Maybe what you really want is to curate what you say here. And so that's a really powerful feature that is going to generally be the default behavior of most themes whenever you go for results. Now, there also might be reasons that the excerpt will show up in other places in a theme as well, but generally for a lot of really common default behaviors for your search results, this is the kind of thing that would happen. And if you think about the reality of the way that people use a lot of websites now that have search tools, is that they don't actually pay attention to the navigation as much as they used to, because a lot of people actually really want to just be able to type in what they're looking for, hit enter, and then be able to quickly find it. And sometimes that works really well and sometimes it doesn't. But if you can give them a little quick synopsis so that they really know what they're going to get instead of just seeing some random beginning paragraph, then that might actually help the usability of your website a lot. And it's actually kind of my opinion that the excerpt is something that is very, very underutilized in a lot of websites. Okay, so now that you have seen the way that a post looks, let's go over here, and we're going to come back to all this stuff later when we do more specific stuff with it. But now that you've seen a post, let's look at what a page looks like. So I'm going to click on pages, and we're just going to choose something that already exists. So, but the first thing I want you to notice right off the bat is how some of these pages have like dashes in front of them, and you see it says child page. This is an example child page, and then dash dash is grandchild page. You can also think of these things as the primary navigation, and then the child page would be like a secondary navigation underneath that primary navigation, and then the grandchild page would be nested as a tertiary or like a third level. All right, and so this is kind of like a deep drilling piece of information. Doesn't mean that you have to necessarily make your pages organized like that in your navigation, but that's the natural behavior if you're going to start making things children and grandchildren of other pages. But that's something by default that you'll notice is something that you can't do with posts that you can do with pages. Now don't be confused. Later you'll notice whenever we go back to posts and we look at categories, you'll be able to nest categories within other larger umbrella categories, but that's not the same as nesting a post within a post. Anyway, so you can see how if you had a lot of pages, potentially you could start to easily get lost in your pages, and the thing that's really nice is you can quickly come up here, and you can do this with posts as well, and you can search them, and you could say, all right, well, I want to find everything that is going to have the word links in the title, and it'll pull that right up. And so that's a really nice feature. And generally you want to name your pages in a very meaningful way, if for no other reason, for search engine optimization, but also to really get people's attention, and so that the content is meaningful. So if let's use this as an example. If I click on that, then what you're going to see is automatically that there are some things that are a little bit different about what you get back here in the back end. You'll notice immediately over here, if you see something that says page attributes, you'll notice that obviously that is not a post. It means that you are editing something as a page. And you see that it gives us a choice of having a parent or to be a child of something else, right? So this is one of the things that you can do with pages that you cannot do with posts. And if you're going to be nesting things, then you also want to give them orders so that 0 comes very first, and then 1, 2, 3, and so forth. The larger the number, the further down in the level of hierarchy it's going to be, so that like if you had a drop-down menu of pages, then 0 would be the first one that would pop up underneath the global menu, or under the parent, I should say. And like the number 6 would come, it would be basically the 7th link down in that series. So that's something that's useful. Otherwise, it's going to automatically try to order things by ID. Okay, so like the order that you made them. So anyway, you'll notice that all those other things that were available for posts, they're not here. Okay. Now again, if I were to click on screen options, you'll see that there are things like custom fields. I'm not going to show you anything about that because that gets a little bit more advanced, but you can also show author and comments and things like that. But you don't need to show any of those things because we're not going to have any of those things that are going to be all that important. And as I said before, like the slug, you can actually see it up here. So if the simpler kind of you keep your page, when it's unnecessary to show other things, the better, right? So anyway, I do want to show you though that like all the WYSIWYG stuff is still the same. The other thing I want to show you is if we go back here where it says all pages, we have the same options here as we did with posts, where we could click to edit, which is exactly the same as clicking the title. Clicking the title and clicking the edit link both will take you into the full edit WYSIWYG mode. Quick edit is different. It gives you some quick stuff that you can edit without having to go completely into the full view. So you could edit the slug, for instance, the date that's posted. You could put a password or make it private. You can change the parent relationship. You can change the template that it's using if you have template options. Now, one of the things that we didn't have as options in this theme is we didn't have templates, and that's because you see here there's only one template that it allows us to use. But in some themes, you'll notice that often that right sidebar, if we were to go back to edit, you would see a template option. You can allow comments here. It's not something that typically you're going to want to do. You don't really want to allow comments typically on normal pages. That's typically something that you would just do on posts. It's really not very normal to put comments on a page, but anyway. And then you can also change the statuses as well. Okay, so that's a quick edit. Now, if I were to go back, I'm just going to click all pages again. And you can see I can also throw it away. Throwing it away does not forever delete it. It literally just puts something in the trash, and then just like your email, you would have to go and delete all of the trash if you wanted to permanently remove it from the database. Otherwise, it just moves it to a trash folder. And then you could also view it, which would allow you to view in the front end view. Okay. Now, and then you see these columns that are useful too. It shows you like when things were published and stuff, even though it doesn't really it doesn't work the same way with posts as it does with posts about the chronology. Pages are organized very differently. And you will also notice that over here under pages, we don't have the option for things like categories and so forth, the way that we do under posts. And I had mentioned before that you can't categorize pages, you can't tag pages in the same way that you can with posts. So that's something that can also help you make decisions about whether or not something should be a page or a post. Is, you know, basically, does it fall under a certain category where you would want it searchable by a category? Then probably you should think about organizing your stuff in posts if that's the case. So, all right. Now, the next thing that we're going to move on to talking about comments. A lot of times people who are using comments are going to be people who are running blog types of websites, and comments are a good way to create user-generated content. And the thing that's really good about that is that whenever users feel engaged and they feel like they have some kind of authority, you know, in a sense, on a page, then they're going to contribute more, they're going to visit more, they're going to come back to see if anybody's responded to their comments, things like that. They're going to come back to see if you approved their comments, things of that nature. Now, the issue with comments, though, is that it also means that you have to constantly, or somebody has to constantly be on top of them. To allow comments to go published without somebody mediating them and checking them first is a terrible, terrible idea. So a lot of websites that, you know, people really don't have the time to go and moderate comments, then what's really likely to happen is that they're just never going to use comments. But the problem is that if you forget to disable comments, you might end up with some really weird stuff injected as spam into your website that you never even realized was a possible option. And so the best way to deal with comments, if you're not really planning on using them, is to disable them using a third-party plugin. And I can show you that when we talk about plugins. So, but if you wanted to just glance at comments, if you think that you are going to use them, then you can see really quickly that you have some options to unapprove a comment, to reply to a comment. You know, as an administrator, if somebody's asking a question, you can come here, ask, you know, and respond really quickly. You could also call it spam, and then it'll try to avoid it the best it can in the future. You can also edit a comment. So like maybe it's a good comment, but maybe somebody had some really bad language, or maybe it's your comment and you realize you misspelled some stuff. You can go in and you can edit it. So anyway, and this is pretty self-explanatory about the way that it works. But one of the things you will notice, though, is if you leave comments enabled and you don't really do anything with them, you're going to find that you're constantly going to get comments from spam bots, and it becomes really a kind of a pain in the neck. And so you typically are going to want to disable that. And I would say the majority of people's websites that are not blogs are probably not going to want to deal with comments. Now, the other thing is media up here. There's a picture that I had uploaded before, and you see that with media you can also look at it in a list view as well if you wanted to. This is kind of a nice grid view, and we're going to go over media separately in a different demonstration because there's a lot more that you can do with it. And as part of that, I'm also going to show you how you can start to think about organizing the content for your assignment. And then we will also get to appearance, themes, widgets, plugins, and so forth. Okay?